After winning the $200 million lottery, my boyfriend, Ethan, secretly gave the ticket to the bankrupt campus queen, Lily. He tried to console me by saying, "We still have the college entrance exams ahead of us. And she has nothing left." Overjoyed, Lily recklessly drove off, causing an accident that killed me. In court, Ethan forged a suicide note in my handwriting and testified that I had taken my own life. With both evidence and testimony in her favor, Lily was acquitted of all charges. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the moment when Ethan was fretting over Lily's bankruptcy. This time, I concealed the lottery ticket and slyly suggested to him, "You don't have the money to save her, but you still have the college entrance exams." The next day, Ethan, despite having the grades for an Ivy League school, deliberately applied to a lower-tier college and sold his acceptance for $1 million to help Lily. At school, Lily's financial ruin was the talk of the campus, and Ethan was the most distraught of all. His lips were covered in sores from anxiety, yet he lied to me, claiming they were from staying up late to study. "Emma," he said, "didn't you say you might win the lottery? Did you?" His face lit up with anticipation. I shook my head in feigned disappointment, and his expression fell instantly. His eyes were full of dismay as he hastily packed his bag, muttering, "I'm heading to the library to study. I'm not going home with you." Once Ethan was out of sight, I pulled out the lottery ticket I had been holding tightly. I had lied. I had won the lottery, a total of $200 million. In my previous life, I couldn't wait to share the news with Ethan, but instead of celebrating, he gave the ticket to Lily, the campus queen. "We still have the college entrance exams," he said. "She has nothing left. I'm the class president. Emma. It's my duty to help struggling classmates." What a joke. If he wanted to help someone, why not use his own money instead of stealing mine? After losing the lottery ticket in my previous life, I poured all my hopes into the entrance exams. But the day before the test, Lily, thrilled by her newfound wealth, drove recklessly and killed me. After my death, she was so consumed by guilt that she wept profusely. Yet Ethan, unable to bear her pain, forged a suicide note in my handwriting and testified that I had taken my own life. With this evidence, Lily was acquitted and walked free. In gratitude, Lily confessed her feelings for Ethan. With his help, she secured a college recommendation and was accepted into an Ivy League school alongside him. The two became the envy of everyone, a picture-perfect couple. Meanwhile, I was left as the forgotten victim of their success. The painful memories surged within me, and I gripped the lottery ticket tightly. This time, I was determined not only to hold on to my winnings and rewrite my fate, but also to make those two pay for their betrayal in blood. I quickly cashed in the ticket. After paying $40 million in taxes, I was left with $160 million. Seeing the hefty number in my bank account filled me with a deep sense of security. Even my steps felt lighter as I returned to school. To my surprise, as soon as I stepped onto campus, I saw Lily crying by the lotus pond. A crowd of fawning admirers surrounded her, offering their sympathy, including Ethan, who had claimed to be studying at the library. Among the group, Ethan didn't stand out. While others pushed their way to be near Lily, Ethan was left on the edge, gazing at her with helpless sorrow. When Lily caught sight of him out of the corner of her eye, her expression was filled with disdain. I suddenly remembered that in my previous life, Lily only began to see Ethan in a new light after he stole my $200 million lottery ticket for her. From that moment, he went from being an unnoticed nobody to the most devoted follower in her eyes. In this life, Ethan and I were both poor. And to Lily, once a wealthy heiress, Ethan was nothing more than a bright but impoverished scholarship student. He wasn't worth her attention. Watching Ethan's pained expression, longing to love someone he had no chance with, I recalled the happiness on his face in my past life when he handed my lottery ticket to Lily. "I like her," he had said. "As long as she's happy, I don't care if I end up in hell." Back then, Ethan and I were neighbors and desk mates, inseparable. Everyone assumed we were a couple. Even I thought so. Only the final step of confessing our feelings was missing. But that day, after a heated argument, he looked at me with mockery and sneered. "Emma, how could you think I like you? Being with you is so boring. Most of the time, I wish you were her. Then I remember it's impossible. She's so dazzling and full of life. Warm like the sun. You're nothing like her. Dull and lifeless. Ethan's words echoed in my mind. I'm willing to do anything. In my previous life, he proved it. He stole my lottery winnings, protected a murderer, traded a recommendation for Lily, and entered a prestigious college alongside her. He made himself the hero of his love story while utterly destroying my life. He wasn't a murderer, but he might as well have been. I stared at Ethan coldly. In the last life, he sacrificed me to become a champion of pure love. This time, I would ensure Ethan sacrificed himself to light up his own so-called romance. After Lily's family declared bankruptcy, her life spiraled into financial ruin. Short on cash, her entire appearance became haggard and worn. Ethan noticed every detail, and it tore him apart. Unable to help her, he sank into self-recrimination, even to the point where he couldn't concentrate in class. Every lecture found him either daydreaming or obsessively searching for quick ways to make money on his phone. My situation, however, was entirely different. In my last life, my financial situation was even worse than Lily's. Without the lottery, I not only had to study but also work multiple part-time jobs just to scrape together enough money for basic living expenses. But this time, with my lottery winnings, I was free from financial worries. For the first time, I could pour all my energy into studying. Ethan had always been the top-ranked student in our grade, while I was perpetually second. Everyone assumed it was because my intellect wasn't as sharp as his. But I knew the truth. It was the hours lost to my part-time jobs that held me back. If not for that, the top spot would have been mine. And now, I was determined to take it back. While Ethan was consumed by his financial worries, an opportunity presented itself. The school announced the reopening of a financial aid program. With a generous grant of $10,000, there was only one slot available for our class, and 3 of us were vying for it: me, Ethan, and Lily. Lily's expression was full of smug confidence. When the homeroom teacher announced the news, Ethan immediately turned to her with excitement and said, "Lily, I don't need this. You should take it." Lily's face lit up with a radiant smile, and Ethan, momentarily stunned, looked at her with even more adoration. I glanced up from my pile of practice papers and smirked. I haven't given up yet. Why should it be hers? My gaze carried a trace of disdain as I turned to Ethan. In the past, whenever it came down to choosing between me and him for something like this, I always let him have it. But that was out of choice. Not because I couldn't win. Ethan might have good grades, but he was arrogant and self-centered, far less approachable than I was with our classmates. When it came to votes, he couldn't beat me. And Lily? She stood no chance. Before her family's bankruptcy, she carried herself with aloof superiority, refusing to mingle with her peers. Now that she was broke, aside from her sycophantic admirers, few sympathized with her. Unless I withdrew, the grant was mine. Both of them understood this. Lily forced out a few tears, her voice sharp and accusatory. "Emma, my family's bankrupt. Can't you just let me have this? Don't be so selfish." There it was. Lily's trademark move. Playing the victim and weaponizing morality. She'd done the same in my last life. She was the one who had recklessly killed me. Yet in court, she painted herself as the victim. "It's all her fault," she had cried. If she hadn't been wandering the streets so late at night, I wouldn't have been startled and lost control of the car. "It's her fault I panicked. She deserved to die." My expression turned icy as I prepared to respond. But before I could, a lazy but clear voice cut through the air. "That's some moral blackmail right there. Why should everyone have to accommodate you? We're all struggling." Startled, I turned toward the speaker and found myself surprised to see Ryan Chun. Known as the school's heartthrob and the son of a jewelry tycoon, Ryan was famous for his aloofness. It was even rumored that Lily had transferred to this school just to get close to him. But despite sitting next to her for half a year, Ryan had always treated her with indifference. Now, however, he was openly siding with me and embarrassing Lily in front of everyone. Lily's face twisted in a mix of pale shock and furious red. She looked as though she wanted to incinerate me with her glare. Ryan's intervention snapped everyone else out of their silence. And one by one, the classmates around us began murmuring their disdain for Lily. No way I'm voting for her, someone muttered. She's ridiculous. Desperate, Lily finally turned her gaze toward Ethan, silently pleading for help. Ethan hesitated, then looked at me with a furrowed brow. Emma, he said cautiously, don't you think? Ethan pulled me aside, his voice low and cautious. Emma, can I talk to you? His expression was tense, and I could sense he was trying to stay calm, though his eyes betrayed his nervousness. Emma, he began, almost pleading, can you give up the grant spot to Lily? It's really important to me. You'll help me, right? Not far away, Lily stood motionless, her gaze fixed on Ethan, waiting for the outcome. Both Ethan and I knew exactly what this was, a test from Lily. If Ethan could convince me to step aside, it would elevate his status in Lily's eyes. She might begin to accept him, even rely on him. But if he failed, he'd be seen as useless, unworthy of her attention. Their dynamic would end right here, and Ethan's secret love for Lily would die today. Ethan was terrified of that outcome. His nervousness was obvious. He even swallowed hard as he waited for my response. On the surface, I pretended to be troubled, but inside, I was laughing. I hadn't expected that spending a bit of money would give me the chance to see Ethan reduced to such a ridiculous state. It was a delightful surprise. How could I possibly compete with Lily for this grant spot? The funding behind the school's assistance program came from me. Having received financial aid from the school for years, I decided to give back after my lottery win. Moreover, my ultimate goal was to ensure Lily saw Ethan's worth. If Lily didn't realize how useful Ethan could be, she wouldn't latch onto him. But once she did, she'd cling to him like a leech, draining him of everything he had. I planned to destroy Ethan, but not with my own hands. Watching him be ruined by the one he idolized would ensure his suffering lasted a lifetime. Feigning hesitation, I agreed to give up the grant spot. Ethan immediately ran back to Lily, eager to take credit. For the first time, Lily smiled at him, her eyes curved in delight as she threw herself into his arms. You're amazing, Ethan, she cooed, her voice sweet and adoring. Her praise turned Ethan's face bright red, and he fidgeted awkwardly, his hands unsure where to go. Returning to my seat, I began to organize my papers when Ryan Chan, tall and confident, strode over, placing both hands on my desk. He leaned in and said mockingly, I thought you'd wised up, Emma, but I guess you're still a hopeless romantic. Ignoring him, I focused on my work. Undeterred, Ryan pulled out a chair and sat next to me. Why bother with Ethan? He clearly doesn't like you. If you're going to waste your energy, why not direct it toward me? I could use a girlfriend. His tone was playful, but his eyes sparkled with genuine interest. Before I could respond, Ethan returned, his head high in confidence brimming from Lily's praise. Ryan turned to him casually. Hey, Ethan, switch seats with me. You can sit where I was, closer to Lily. Ethan hesitated, glancing at me. After all, we had been desk mates since the beginning of the school year. But his eyes quickly darted back to Lily, who was watching him expectantly. Pretending to consider my opinion, Ethan asked, Emma, are you okay with this? I nodded, masking my amusement. It worked perfectly for me. By sitting next to Lily, Ethan would no longer need my help to prove his worth. She'd discover just how much of a tool he could be. After the switch, Lily shot me a glare filled with venomous hatred. Her expression only made me smile. As expected, once Ethan became Lily's desk mate, she wasted no time in exploiting him. She loved snacks and made Ethan run errands to buy her favorite treats daily. Even during class, if she had a craving, Ethan would skip lessons to fetch whatever she wanted. She enjoyed sneaking out and encouraged Ethan to climb over the school walls with her, leading him to internet cafes and shady places. Under the flashing neon lights, she would sway her hips to the music and pass him a cigarette, her lips brushing against his as she handed it over. Under Lily's influence, Ethan transformed with alarming speed. The once praised top student of the school became someone everyone avoided. He skipped class, ignored his studies, and began hanging out in all the wrong places. When Ethan reappeared at school after a 2-day absence, his disheveled state shocked everyone. The top 2 buttons of his school uniform were undone, exposing his collarbone, which now bore a fresh tattoo of Lily's name. The homeroom teacher, who had held such high hopes for Ethan, exploded in anger. "Have you lost your mind? Ethan?" she shouted, furious. "Do you even realize what you're doing to yourself?" But Ethan couldn't even muster the energy to look up, leaning lazily against the doorway. He looked as though he might drift off to sleep at any moment. It wasn't just an act. Ethan was truly falling apart. He was truly exhausted, to the point of wanting to fall asleep right where he stood. Eating, drinking, and having fun all required money. And Lily was already bankrupt. Of course, she had none. To maintain her extravagant lifestyle, Ethan relentlessly took on part-time jobs, earning money to support her expenses. The homeroom teacher, thoroughly disappointed, waved him off and told him to return to his seat. Lily, however, giggled sweetly and praised Ethan, saying, "You looked so cool standing up to the teacher like that." Ethan, despite his fatigue, managed a smile filled with satisfaction at her compliment. Then, the homeroom teacher announced the results of the national physics competition. I had won the gold medal. The classroom erupted into cheers. It was well known that the physics competition was notoriously difficult, but its prestige was unparalleled. Winning gold meant that top universities would offer early admissions, essentially granting a free pass to the best schools. The homeroom teacher looked at me with pride and said warmly, "You can start thinking about which university you want to attend. With your results, Tsinghua and Peking University are both within reach." The class filled with congratulatory voices again, their excitement overflowing. The noise woke Ethan from his stupor. Irritated, he rubbed his ears and scoffed. "It's just early admission. What's the big deal? I can get into Tsinghua or Peking University with my college entrance exam results. No problem." The classroom quieted down slightly. No one doubted Ethan's abilities. He had always been the top student. And even though he had been slipping recently, his strong academic foundation over the past 3 years meant he was still a force to be reckoned with. After making his declaration, Ethan turned to Lily, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Lily, which university do you like?" "I'll choose the same one as you." Lily beamed, her eyes narrowing in delight. I smirked, but my eyes carried no warmth. "Any university you want." "Huh, no, Ethan. By the end of this, you'll have nowhere to go." After class, Ryan suddenly suggested celebrating my early admission with dinner. His offer caught me off guard, and I laughed, teasing him. "Why would you treat me to dinner for my success?" Ryan glanced at me and answered casually, "Because I'm happy for you. Who wouldn't want to see the person they like succeed?" His words were straightforward, but his gaze lingered, carrying an air of sincerity. Before I could reply, he leaned in conspiratorially and added, "Wear something nice tonight. You might be in for a surprise." I smiled and nodded. Ryan, ever bold, reached out and ruffled my hair affectionately before walking away. As Ryan disappeared from view, the smile on my face froze, and my fingers clenched into fists. No one knew the truth about Ryan. Beneath his charming facade, he was a twisted monster. He enjoyed inflicting pain. On animals. On women he targeted. On anything he could control. In my past life, on the night Lily hit me with her car, I had been trying to escape from the personal hell Ryan had created for me. It was the 3rd night of my captivity. I had witnessed him torturing over a dozen cats to death. Their anguished cries etched into my mind. Ryan had lifted my chin with his fingers, his smile chillingly carefree. "You're the first girl I've ever truly taken an interest in. Too bad you're always hanging around Ethan. It made it harder to get close to you." The long wait seemed to have heightened his sadistic tendencies, and when he finally had me, his cruelty knew no bounds. He thrived on my fear, loved seeing me teeter on the edge of consciousness, and relished every whimper of pain. It didn't matter if it was on the bed or off. His satisfaction came from my suffering. The memories surged, dark and suffocating, threatening to pull me under. My thoughts were interrupted by Lily's sharp voice cutting through the air behind me. "How did you seduce him? You act like such a studious girl. But who knows what tricks you're hiding to lure men in?" I turned around to face her and found her face twisted with jealousy and bitterness. My plan to destroy Ryan hinged on Lily. I needed her insecurities and ambition to work in my favor. For now, I put on a smug expression, leaning in just enough to make her uncomfortable. "He just likes me better." I said lightly, deliberately goading her. Lily's eyes widened in disbelief as she stared at me. He really prefers this sort of thing. I added nonchalantly, spreading my hands as if to say, isn't it obvious? Why else would he like me and not you? My words struck a nerve. Lily, with all her pride and vanity, could never accept that someone might find her inferior to me. Her expression twisted further as she tried to process my jab. I added with a sweet smile, oh, and he mentioned that he plans to propose to me tonight. By tomorrow, I'll be a wealthy woman married into a prominent family. Returning to the life of wealth and privilege was Lily's ultimate dream, and the jealousy in her eyes as she looked at me only deepened. I pretended to sigh in frustration. It's too soon, I murmured. But he said his family is very traditional. If a man gets physically involved with a woman, he must marry her. Since he's planning to spend tonight with me, marriage is a certainty. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Lily's gaze flicker with calculation as her mind churned. A second later, she began probing about the details of my supposed date with Ryan, subtly trying to gather enough information to take my place. Her intentions couldn't have been more obvious. Inside, I was laughing uncontrollably. How predictable. She had fallen right into my trap, coming up with the ridiculous idea of impersonating me, feigning ignorance. I gave her every detail about the planned date. When she later slipped me 2 sleeping pills under the guise of concern, I even pretended not to notice. As I slept, Lily applied heavy makeup to her face, donned a mask, and changed into my clothes. With a smug smile, she walked out the door, pausing just long enough to glance back at me with a sneer. You idiot. You deserve to have this life stolen from you, she muttered. With this mask on, who's going to know I'm not you? Once everything's done and dusted, he won't even have the chance to back out. After Lily left, I opened my eyes and calmly dialed a top entertainment journalist. I have a story for you, I said, my voice steady. The son of a jewelry tycoon, Ryan, is a violent sadist. Tonight, he'll reveal his true nature. The journalist's excitement was palpable through the phone. What's your condition? They asked eagerly. This is explosive news, I replied, my voice chillingly calm as images of Ryan's past cruelty flashed through my mind. Those helpless cats he tortured to death. And his smug declaration, torturing animals is unethical, not illegal. No one can stop me. Make it as big as possible, I said. I want him to be ruined forever. You can count on me, the journalist promised. True to their reputation, the story broke that very night. News of Ryan's abusive tendencies spread like wildfire. The handsome heartthrob everyone admired was exposed as a violent sadist. It was revealed that his home contained horrifying evidence of animal abuse, dismembered remains and grotesque specimens. The scandal disgusted everyone. He's vile, one headline read. A monster hiding behind a charming facade. As for Lily, she didn't escape unscathed. She was carried out of Ryan's house in tears, battered and bruised. It was rumored that she had several broken ribs, but sympathy was in short supply. Don't feel sorry for her, someone said. She threw herself at him. She brought it on herself. She's not alone, though. Another added, her loyal puppy, Ethan, will never leave her side. I laughed coldly at the thought of Ethan's unwavering devotion. The emptiness of his desk in class didn't surprise me. Ethan's belief in enduring hardship as a testament to love was unshakable. In our past life, when Lily had faced the risk of jail time for killing me, Ethan's first instinct had been to protect her. He saw it as his duty to stand by her, to share her burden, and to strengthen their bond. I imagined he was now at the hospital, fretting over Lily's medical bills while she clung to him like a drowning person clutching at straws. Ryan's brutality had likely left her with serious injuries, and her financial state meant she couldn't afford treatment. The jewelry tycoon wouldn't pay her bills. He'd probably be glad to see her die in the hospital. At this point, Ethan was all she had left, and like a parasitic leech, Lily would pull him down into the depths with her, ensuring he never surfaced again. After a week of skipping school, Ethan finally returned. His first move was to find me. Emma, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Can you help me out? I need to borrow $1 million to pay for Lily's medical bills. I raised an eyebrow, saying nothing. As he continued, "We've been friends since we were kids. You're the only one I can count on. Please, just this once." Ethan's eyes were filled with desperation and an emotion he likely thought looked like love. "I'll pay you back. Promise. You're my only hope." His tone was pleading, his words dripping with sorrow, but all I felt was revulsion. How pathetic. He really dared to think this would work. Throwing a few words at me and expecting I'd saddle myself with $1 million debt. All because his beloved Lily needed medical treatment. From my past life to this one, Ethan had always been consistently selfish. Fortunately, I had anticipated this moment. Sighing, I said, "Ethan, I went to the bank to ask about a loan, but they said I don't qualify. I don't have any assets to back it up, but your family home is in your name. If you apply for a loan, they'll approve it." Ethan's eyes darted away, avoiding my gaze, and I couldn't help but smirk internally. He wouldn't dare use the house as collateral. Ethan's mother, Mrs. Hifangchio, guarded that house like it was her lifeline. If she found out he'd mortgaged it, she might very well kill Lily herself. Besides, that house was the only asset Ethan had. He couldn't bear to part with it. For all his talk of love, Ethan cared most about himself. Leaning into my next move, I slowly pulled out a pamphlet from a technical college and offered, "This school has a program where top students can apply and get a $1 million scholarship right away." Ethan's gaze fixed on the pamphlet. For a moment, he looked tempted, but hesitation clouded his expression. I pretended to understand, adding gently, "Forget it. Trading your future for love only happens in novels. We're just ordinary people. Nobody has that kind of grand, self-sacrificing love." No sooner had the words left my mouth than Ethan snatched the pamphlet from my hands. Scoffing, he said, "You don't understand my love for Lily at all. What's a future compared to being with her? I'll do anything for her. And who needs the college entrance exams? I can make something of myself without them." With that, Ethan turned and stormed off. A slow smile spread across my face. I knew Ethan too well. He didn't even truly love Lily. He loved the idea of sacrificing himself for love. That martyrdom gave him a sense of fulfillment. All it took was a small push from me, and he chose love without hesitation. He despised the monotony of studying and exams, which was why he was drawn to someone like Lily, who openly rejected it all. But soon enough, he'd realize how empty life is without the foundation those exams provide. The very next day, Ethan declared that after the college entrance exams, he would attend the technical college in the pamphlet. His announcement sent the homeroom teacher into a near fit. Furious, she called him a fool. Other teachers took turns trying to reason with him, imploring him to rethink his decision. "Ethan, don't be impulsive," one pleaded. "We'll figure out a way to cover the medical bills. Don't throw your future away. Think about the exams." Another added, "You've spent 12 years preparing for this. The exams are your chance to get into a top university and change your life. With a scholarship from Tsinghua or Peking University, you'd have more than enough for the medical expenses. Lily can hang on for a little longer." The teachers spoke with urgency, trying to appeal to Ethan's reason. But the more they pressed, the more determined he became. The pushback only fueled his resolve to sacrifice his future for love, to cast himself as the hero in his own romantic tragedy. That moment, Ethan had just returned from the hospital, carrying Lily in his arms. Her face was pale, and she leaned weakly against him, her frailty amplifying her reliance on him. Ethan was her last lifeline, and she clung to him with desperation. She couldn't afford to let him waver now. Lily glared at the teachers with venom in her eyes and said in a saccharine, mocking tone, "Ethan, listen to your teachers. Give up on me. If you go to that technical college, their year-end bonuses will disappear." Her words ignited a wave of disgust on Ethan's face. Unable to hold back, he shouted, "I've had enough of this. You're all so selfish, only thinking about yourselves. None of you care about my feelings at all." His voice grew louder and more frenzied. "I love Lily. I'm willing to sacrifice my future for her. The college entrance exams mean nothing compared to her." His shouting silenced the room. The teachers exchanged looks, their expressions ranging from disappointment to disbelief, as though they were staring at a stranger. The homeroom teacher's face turned icy with disapproval. her hope for Ethan completely extinguished. I stepped forward to steady the homeroom teacher, gently saying, "Teacher, it's no use. You can't reason with someone blinded by love." The teacher gripped my hand tightly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Emma, please, don't follow his example. Stay focused." I nodded earnestly, and the teacher patted my head with a relieved smile before dismissing the rest of the teachers. She had given up on trying to change Ethan's mind. Lily, triumphant, flashed a smug smile as if she'd passed some great test. But before she could bask in her victory, a cold laugh echoed from the doorway. "You got past the teachers, but you won't get past me." Ethan froze, his panic evident as he stammered, "Mom." Mrs. Hifangcio strode into the room, closing the distance between us in a few steps. She clasped my hand warmly, her expression full of concern. "Emma, I'm so sorry I'm late. Don't worry. I'm here now. You're the only daughter-in-law I'll ever acknowledge. Your mother and I have been best friends for years, and I care for you as much as she does. I won't let anyone bully you." Lily's triumphant expression immediately crumbled. She hadn't anticipated another obstacle, let alone one as formidable as Mrs. He. Worse, Ethan's confidence began to waver under his mother's scolding. With just a few words, she guilted him into silence, making him too ashamed to mention skipping the prestigious entrance exams again. After delivering her stern warning, Mrs. He gently invited me to return home with her. "Your mom misses you," she said softly. I nodded but politely excused myself, saying I would come home later. Once she and Ethan left, I approached Lily, who stood there, fuming with resentment. Leaning in, I whispered, "Getting around his mom is simple. She has a weakness, greed." Lily frowned suspiciously. "Why are you helping me?" Smiling sweetly, I replied, "Maybe I'm just moved by Ethan's devotion." Lily tilted her chin proudly, misinterpreting my words. "Of course you are. You're just jealous. Ethan doesn't like you, and no matter what you do, that won't change." I chuckled silently to myself. Jealous? As if. And as for Ethan, the only thing tying me to him was his mother, Mrs. He. She and my mom were neighbors and best friends, which was why Mrs. He had always wanted me to be Ethan's girlfriend. I was, in her eyes, the best match within his reach. But Mrs. He wasn't as trustworthy as she appeared. She was a master manipulator who had completely fooled my mom in our past life. After I died, my mom refused to believe I had taken my own life and insisted on investigating the truth. Mrs. He, using the trust my mom had in her, lured her to a cliff with the promise of evidence, and then pushed her off. This time, I would tear off Mrs. He's mask and expose her lies, and I would drag Ethan down into the abyss alongside her. Lily began scheming, no doubt figuring out how to persuade Mrs. He to accept Ethan's decision to attend a technical college. While she was still mulling over her plan, an explosive piece of news suddenly spread across campus. Someone at our school had won a $200 million lottery. The announcement caused an uproar, and everyone was talking about it. During the break, Lily, resting irritably in Ethan's arms as her injuries tormented her, perked up at the mention of the lottery. "Someone from our school won $200 million? That's incredible," a student exclaimed. "I wonder who the lucky person is. If it were me, I'd laugh myself awake in my dreams." The instant Lily heard this, her pained wails ceased, and a gleam of greed flickered in her eyes. That moment, Mrs. He stormed back into the classroom with my mom in tow. She pointed an accusatory finger at Lily and shouted, "You shameless girl. How dare you cling to my son? I've already said it. Ethan is Emma's boyfriend. Her mother is here too. If you don't back off, she won't let you get away with this." Suppressing a laugh, I watched as my mom hurried to my side, her face filled with concern. She had always known how much I cared for Ethan. "Emma, don't be afraid," she reassured me. "Mrs. He has always doted on you. She'll make sure everything works out." Mrs. He nodded vigorously in agreement. But before they could continue, Lily suddenly straightened up and boldly declared, "Do you know who won the $200 million lottery? It's me." Her words sent shockwaves through the room. Everyone froze in disbelief, including Mrs. He, whose expression twisted with astonishment and suspicion. "You're lying," she spat. "If you won the lottery, Why would you need my son to trade his grades for money? Lily sneered. I was just testing your son to see if he'd be willing to sacrifice for me. If he passed, I planned to share the 200 million with him. The mention of splitting the prize money lit up Mrs. He's eyes with greed. It was unmistakable. But Lily scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. Unfortunately, he has a foolish mother who forced me to reveal the truth. Fine. Have it your way. I'll let your son go to Tsinghua University. Not a single penny of that 200 million will go to him, Lily declared. Tears streamed down her face as she turned to Ethan, crying. Ethan, I really wanted to attend the same university as you. I'm so sorry. I was selfish and ended up ruining your future. Ethan, moved by her words, shook his head vehemently. You wanted to go to the same school as me? Don't worry. I'm set on going to that technical college. We'll be together no matter what. Lily's tears flowed even harder as she turned to Mrs. He, sobbing. But your mom doesn't approve of me. Without her blessing, we can't be happy. I'm sorry. Let's break up. Faced with the choice between Tsinghua University and $200 million, Mrs. He didn't hesitate. Smiling broadly, she said, Of course I approve. Why wouldn't I? That's why I brought Emma's mom here today. To show her the reality of the situation. Her daughter doesn't compare to you. My mom's expression turned to one of utter disbelief as she stared at Mrs. He. She couldn't fathom the betrayal. Mrs. He, growing impatient, snapped. You see? She has $200 million. While Emma can't even afford her tuition. How could she possibly compare? Take your daughter and stay away from my son. My mom trembled with rage. But I steadied her and spoke calmly. If we're so beneath you, then you'd better move out of our house as soon as possible. Both our families owned houses. But Mrs. He had moved into ours, relying on her own property for rental income, taking advantage of my mom's kindness. She had been living comfortably at our expense. Mrs. He waved her hand dismissively. Fine. We'll move out. My daughter-in-law has $200 million. What's one house compared to that? She then turned her attention back to Lily, coaxing her. After much persuasion, Lily finally reluctantly agreed to stay with Ethan. That very day, Ethan signed the agreement to attend the technical college, securing the $1 million scholarship. The contract stipulated that if he failed to attend the college or didn't score high enough for Tsinghua University, he would face a $10 million penalty. With the money in hand, Lily embraced Ethan in front of everyone, and the two left the classroom together. The homeroom teacher, having completely given up on Ethan, coldly told them to leave. They cast disdainful looks at the teacher, then walked out hand in hand, flaunting their relationship around the campus. Using part of the $1 million, Lily covered her surgery costs and still had plenty left over. With the surplus, she quickly returned to her lavish lifestyle, frequenting nightclubs and indulging in her usual extravagant habits. Meanwhile, Ethan became a school celebrity, earning the nickname the Saint of Pure Love. He wore the title proudly, basking in the attention. His relationship with Lily became even more high-profile, and he reveled in the satisfaction of protecting his so-called true love and achieving a happy ending with her. Ethan's bliss lasted until the second semester of senior year. During the mock exams that simulated the college entrance exams, the results were a wake-up call. Ethan dropped from being the top-ranked student to 10th place, while I rose to take the top spot. The mock exams were highly indicative of actual college entrance exam performance, and Ethan's total score fell far below Tsinghua University's cutoff from the previous year. The technical college immediately sent him a warning. If his real exam score didn't meet Tsinghua's threshold, he would be liable for the $10 million penalty. For the first time, Ethan panicked. He couldn't bear the thought of starting his adult life saddled with $10 million in debt. Desperate, he tried to refocus on his studies, but when he attempted to reintegrate into the class, he found himself excluded. Why wasn't I told about the weekend tutoring sessions? Ethan stormed into the teacher's office, his frustration boiling over. Why wasn't I informed? Since Ethan had signed the agreement, the homeroom teacher had completely given up on him. He was excluded from every class activity, including extra lessons. The teacher, unfazed by his anger, let out a cold, mocking laugh. Her voice, sharp and icy, cut through the room. The school doesn't waste resources on technical college students. Those words seemed to crush Ethan, and his face turned an unsightly shade. But he couldn't refute them. I have talent, he muttered, trying to convince himself. I don't need extra classes. I can catch up just by attending the regular ones. Ethan gave up his habit of skipping class and began attending every lecture diligently. However, after less than a week, his resolve was already starting to crack. He couldn't immerse himself in the class's study environment. Everyone was focused on the college entrance exams, driven by the hope and anxiety of getting into prestigious universities. But Ethan was different. No matter how high his scores might be, his destination was already set: a technical college. His classmates avoided him, and the teachers ignored his questions as if he didn't exist. He was treated like air, cut off from the most basic principles of interaction within the group. It was as though a drab gray duckling had wandered into a flock of elegant swans. When Ethan had first announced signing the agreement, he'd been celebrated as the saint of pure love. But now, he was nothing more than a laughingstock. Day by day, his frustration grew. Meanwhile, Lily, having spent all the money Ethan had earned from the scholarship, waltzed into the classroom without a care. Ethan immediately approached her, his voice urgent. Lily, can you help me pay the penalty fee? Then we can go to Tsinghua together. Okay. Ethan had once thought it didn't matter where he went as long as he was with Lily. But now, he understood that it wasn't the same at all. Lily, startled, stammered, paying the penalty fee won't help. I don't have the grades to get into Tsinghua. I can tutor you, Ethan said eagerly, desperation etched on his face. Lily laughed dismissively. You might love teaching, but I don't love learning. If you can figure out a way for me to get into Tsinghua without studying, then I'll pay the penalty fee. She thought her response would be enough to pacify Ethan, but she failed to notice the determined gleam in his eyes. After class, Ethan came over to my desk, smiling warmly, the way he used to. Emma, congratulations on becoming the top student in our grade. It's been a while since we've talked, hasn't it? Feigning casualness, he asked. By the way, which university did you choose for your early admission? I gripped my pen tightly, suppressing the smirk threatening to surface. As expected, Ethan was scheming again, trying to rope me into his plans. In our past life, he'd stolen my early admission offer and used it to secure Lily's spot at Tsinghua. Now, it was time to settle the score. Tsinghua, I replied calmly. Hearing my response, Ethan's eyes immediately gleamed with greed. He licked his lips and said, That's an excellent choice. Emma, can I take a look at your early admission letter? Early admission letters from top universities are formal agreements sent to outstanding students. Signing and returning the document guarantees admission, and the university follows up with an official acceptance letter. Ethan, with his knack for forgery, could easily replicate the letter using the details from mine. By altering the information, he could replace my name and photo with Lily's, effectively transferring my spot to her without anyone noticing. In our past life, this was precisely how Ethan had stolen my admission and given it to Lily after I had died. I smiled faintly and handed him the letter. Ethan eagerly scanned the details, committing every line to memory. His face lit up with triumph as he returned the letter to me, feigning a sympathetic tone. Congratulations, Emma. Then, with a smug expression, he strode back to his seat and leaned close to Lily, whispering about his plan to secure her spot at Tsinghua using my admission offer. Lily let out an excited shriek. Ethan, is that true? You're amazing. Ethan tilted his chin proudly, his face glowing with self-satisfaction. Of course. Just wait. You're going to Tsinghua with me. Lily, overjoyed, threw her arms around him. Though Ethan didn't like studying, he still clung to the belief that his scheme would work. Lily, even if you're not into learning, I can teach you, he said cheerfully. Once the acceptance letter arrives, you'll help me pay the penalty fee, right? Then we can go to Tsinghua together. Lily averted her eyes, nervously nodding. There was no way she'd tell Ethan the truth, that she hadn't won the lottery at all. Ethan, oblivious to Lily's hesitation, hummed a tune as he flipped through his textbook, clearly pleased with himself. I leaned back in my chair, watching him lazily, my shoulders shaking with silent laughter. He truly thought I was as naive as in my past life, ready to walk blindly into his trap. Ethan, I've already prepared your grave. Enjoy this fleeting moment of joy, because soon, you'll sink into the darkness forever. Ethan successfully forged Lily's admission information and swapped it with mine. When I sent out my official acceptance form, Ethan and Lily were ecstatic, unable to contain their glee, as my classmates congratulated me on being admitted, telling me I had a bright future ahead. Lily couldn't help but let out a laugh. "Don't celebrate too early," she said with a smug smile. "The final admittee might not be who you think." One of my classmates shot back. "Whoever it is, it definitely won't be someone ranked last in the grade. Go talk about your romance elsewhere. What do Tsinghua and college entrance exams have to do with a pair of technical college sweethearts like you?" The classroom erupted with laughter, and comment after comment tore at Lily's pride. Her face twisted in anger as she snapped, "For your information, the person Tsinghua accepts will be me. The agreement has already been sent." No longer trying to hide her intentions, Lily openly bragged about her supposed early admission to Tsinghua, claiming she'd soon receive the official acceptance letter. Though most of my classmates dismissed her claims as nonsense, her confidence made some uneasy. They approached me, warning me to be cautious, as these types of identity theft schemes had occurred before. The penalties were severe: expulsion at best, criminal charges at worst, which had largely deterred such behavior. But no one could guarantee that Lily wouldn't be reckless enough to try. I just smiled, offering no response. I had already planned everything. The day the acceptance letters arrived, Lily and Ethan were the first to rush into the classroom. When the homeroom teacher entered with the letters in hand, Lily's gaze locked onto them, staring so intensely it was as if she could burn a hole through the envelopes. Ethan gently held her hand, trying to calm her nerves. "Don't worry," he said soothingly. "Your name is definitely on that letter." The teacher raised the envelopes, her cold gaze sweeping across Lily and Ethan. "I have 2 early admission letters here," she said icily. "One is for Lily, admitted to Tsinghua University." Lily let out a piercing shriek of joy, jumping up and down in celebration. But Ethan's expression flickered with unease. "And the second," the teacher continued, "is for Emma, admitted to Peking University." Ethan's face instantly drained of color, while Lily continued to celebrate, oblivious to the shift in tone. The teacher's next words cut through the room like a blade. "Tsinghua informed us that Emma had already declined their offer, and they have the records to prove it. However, someone attempted to use her personal information to fraudulently claim her spot. This is a serious violation, and we will handle it with utmost severity." Lily finally realized something was wrong. Turning to Ethan, she frowned and hissed, "What's going on? Didn't you say everything was foolproof?" Ethan's panicked gaze darted to me. His voice trembled with rage as he growled, "Emma, you set me up." I smiled faintly. "I just went along with your plan." Ethan's plan was, admittedly, flawless. He banked on the assumption that Tsinghua wouldn't have my updated information. By overriding my personal details with Lily's, he intended to make her the recipient of my admission. That's why he was so eager to confirm which university I had chosen. But what he didn't know was that I had been playing him from the very beginning. I hadn't chosen Tsinghua. My actual selection was Peking University. Everything else had been a smokescreen. The homeroom teacher's voice rang out like the final judgment. "Ethan and Lily, the school has reviewed your fraudulent actions and issued a decision." All eyes turned to the teacher, waiting for the verdict. "You are both expelled. Furthermore, your eligibility for the college entrance exams is revoked." The teacher's words landed like a thunderclap. Ethan's face turned ashen, his expression frozen in shock. Lily, on the other hand, erupted into a fit of anger. "Why am I being punished?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "This was all Ethan's doing. I didn't participate. If anyone should be punished, it's him." Ethan looked at her in disbelief. He had never imagined that the woman he loved would throw him under the bus at a moment like this. Lily, refusing to accept the outcome, angrily pressured Ethan to admit that it was entirely his idea and had nothing to do with her. The homeroom teacher looked at them both with a mocking smile, her disdain palpable. I raised my head and said what everyone was thinking. "Ethan, How does love taste now? Ethan's expression turned bitter. In the end, he took full responsibility for the scheme, preparing to pack his things and leave the school. But he hadn't anticipated that things were far from over. As soon as the expulsion was official, the technical college that had given Ethan the $1 million scholarship sent a representative to demand the $10 million penalty fee for breaching the contract. The representative, visibly annoyed, sneered at Ethan. "I knew you were an idiot when you signed that deal. Who gives up Tsinghua for a measly million? Hurry up and pay the $10 million, or you can spend the rest of your life rotting in prison." The mention of prison turned Ethan's face pale with fear. Falling to his knees, he begged the representative for more time. "My girlfriend won the $200 million lottery. $10 million is nothing. I'll get the money from her right away." Scrambling, Ethan ran to find Lily, who was at that moment holding one of my Hermes bags, a bag she had stolen from me. I caught her red-handed, but Lily refused to admit it. "This Hermes bag is mine," she declared arrogantly. "I used to be a rich heiress. You're just a poor scholarship student. How could you possibly afford something like this?" The onlookers murmured in agreement. After all, Lily had once been a wealthy socialite, and with her alleged lottery winnings, owning a Hermes bag seemed perfectly plausible. Meanwhile, I, a struggling student reliant on part-time jobs, couldn't possibly afford such a luxury. Lily clutched the bag tightly, her eyes gleaming with triumph. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. She truly had no intention of coming clean, so it seemed I would have to reveal the truth myself. Clearing my throat, I prepared to expose her lies. But before I could say a word, Ethan stormed up behind me and slapped me across the face. The blow was so forceful that my vision blurred, and a dull pain radiated from my cheek. Stars danced before my eyes, and if not for a classmate catching me, I would have collapsed from the momentum. Ethan glared at me with unbridled hatred. "Emma, haven't you done enough? You schemed against me, and now you're trying to smear Lily. I'll kill you." Stunned and disoriented, I raised a trembling hand to my lips, only to feel the cold trickle of blood. The sight of it snapped a nearby classmate into action, and they ran off to get a teacher. After striking me, Ethan immediately turned his attention back to Lily, rushing to her side. "Are you okay, Lily? Did she hurt you?" Lily recoiled in disgust, roughly shaking off his hand. "Why are you still here? You should have been expelled already." Panicked, Ethan grabbed her wrist and pleaded. "Lily, the technical college is demanding I pay the $10 million penalty fee, or they'll send me to prison. Please, you have to help me." Lily cast him a disdainful glance, her voice dripping with contempt. "Help you? Keep dreaming. Why should I give you money?" Lily sneered. Ethan grabbed her wrist tightly, his voice trembling with anger. "That money was borrowed for you. I took the fall for you and got expelled because of you. I love you. I've done so much for you. And now you won't even help me with $10 million. Lily scoffed, her tone dripping with disdain. "If you weren't useful to me, do you think I'd have wasted my time with you? Take a good look at yourself. Who do you think would want someone like you? Sacrificing yourself for me is your honor. As for repayment, don't even think about it." Now that Ethan had lost all value to her, Lily no longer felt the need to keep up any pretense. Ethan was consumed by fury. "You're the one who said you had $200 million. If it weren't for that, why would I have signed the agreement so easily? Where's your $200 million now? Just loan me $10 million. That's all I need. Do you want my life to be ruined?" Ethan's desperate pleas earned him some sympathy from the onlookers, and several people began urging Lily to help him. Lily's expression turned awkward and guilty under the mounting pressure. That moment, the principal arrived, flanked by teachers. Seeing me on the ground, the principal rushed over to help me up, his voice commanding the room. "Who says she can't afford an Hermes bag? Just last time, the school awarded Emma $10 million in financial aid." The entire room fell silent, stunned by the revelation. Lily refused to believe it. How could she possibly have $10 million? The principal let out a cold laugh. "Because she's the one who actually won the $200 million lottery. Not like you, who only knows how to lie." The truth unraveled Lily's composure, her face twisted with panic and disbelief, while Ethan stood frozen, staring at me with a mix of shock and regret. The principal's disdain for Lily was evident. Taking the opportunity, he announced, "Lily violated school regulations by stealing. She is hereby expelled." Lily met the same fate as Ethan. Expelled and disgraced. She tried to throw a tantrum, but no one paid her any attention. Even Ethan ignored her, his focus entirely on me. In this moment of desperation, he knew I was the only one who could save him. Ethan hesitated before walking over to me. His voice was strained as he said, "Emma, I'm sorry." I pressed a cold pack against my swollen cheek and replied icily, "Apology not accepted. You owe me for my medical expenses, and I'm filing charges against you for assault." Ethan's expression darkened instantly. Frowning, he snapped, "Didn't you like me? If you pay the 10 million, I'll be with you. Isn't that what you've always wanted?" His condescending tone, as if I should feel grateful for his offer, made me laugh in disbelief. My laughter was sharp, laced with mockery. "Do you think you're worth anything? You're just a man about to go to prison. Why would I ever want you?" Ethan's face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Stop pretending," he barked. "You've always liked me." There was a hint of pride in his expression, as if my affection for him was some kind of trophy, but it only disgusted me further. So he had always known. He knew I liked him. Even when he stole my lottery ticket to give to Lily, when he forged my suicide note, and when he stole my college admission spot. He knew, and he used my feelings to create a perfect future for his so-called true love. All while trampling on my sincerity. Someone like him deserved no sympathy. My last shred of affection for him evaporated completely. The $10 million penalty fee, plus my medical expenses and damages for emotional distress. "Ethan, get ready to spend the rest of your life in prison." Panic and despair clouded Ethan's eyes as he fell to his knees, begging me for forgiveness. But his pleas meant nothing to me. In our past life, he had shielded a murderer. In this life, he would rot in jail. Once Ethan's fate was sealed, it was Lily's turn. Being expelled from school was nothing compared to the hit and run she committed in our past life. I had already devised the perfect punishment for her, one that would make her wish she were dead. With $160 million at my disposal, I was just getting started. I began deliberately learning about investments and stepped into the jewelry industry. Money sitting idle is dead money, and I didn't want to just hold on to $160 million. I wanted more. Enough to defeat all those vile individuals. Like Ryan's father, the so-called jewelry tycoon. Like father, like son. Ryan's sadistic tendencies were inherited directly from his father. While Ryan enjoyed torturing cats, his father took pleasure in abusing students. Under the guise of philanthropy, the tycoon would sponsor students, gaining their gratitude and trust. Then, he would subject them to psychological and physical torment, verbally degrading them and whipping them with lashes. His so-called aid offered a glimmer of hope, only to plunge these students into an even darker abyss. In my past life, a fellow student in the sponsorship group revealed the truth to me. Not long after, they died in a suspicious accident. Back then, I was just as desperate and powerless as they were. But now, I've been reborn. Heaven gave me a second chance, and I intend to extend that chance to them. I want to offer them genuine support, to lead them toward a brighter future. This life isn't just about revenge. It's about gratitude, too. As I grew more skilled in managing my finances, my wealth multiplied. Bit by bit, I chipped away at the jewelry tycoon's company. Once I had enough evidence, I sent him to prison. After the tycoon was behind bars, I had Ryan transferred from prison to a mental institution. Then, I ensured that Lily was sent there as well. Ryan's years in prison hadn't dulled his sadistic tendencies. In fact, they had only grown more twisted and cruel. In the asylum, Lily became Ryan's sole target. The moment Ryan saw Lily being brought in, he grinned like a predator finding its prey. To him, Lily was the cause of all his suffering. If she hadn't tried to take my place, he believed he wouldn't have been caught and imprisoned. Every day, Lily's screams echoed through the asylum. With Ethan in prison, his mother, Mrs. He, lost both her future support and my mom's financial help. Her only property was sold off to pay debts, leaving her to work nonstop just to scrape by. Desperate, she tried to beg my mom for forgiveness, but my mom didn't have the time or patience to deal with her. Instead, My mom was busy preparing gifts and warm clothing for the students I was sponsoring. Her days were filled with purpose and joy. As the number of students I supported grew, I began to change more and more lives. They affectionately called me Big Sister, their eyes full of hope and gratitude when they looked at me. No longer did they face the bleak despair of my past life, where so many of them died tragically, their faces devoid of life. How wonderful it is to have been reborn, not just for myself, but for them as well.